CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Now, the housing crisis started with a lot of bad mortgages given to people who could not afford them. Now banks are stuck with these so-called toxic loans. But as Anthony Mason reports, there may be a solution.
These are the toxic assets. This is what all of the fuss in today's news is about.
The Denver-based Allonhill company does detective work on tens of thousands of bad loans, determining their value for investors eager to buy them. But many banks are still reluctant to sell the loans at deep losses.
They don't want to do that because they would have, in many cases, they'd be insolvent. In many others, they wouldn't be insolvent, they'd be in big trouble, and it'd be a very ugly headline.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Now to the health of America's banks. The government has just shut down another one, Southern Bank in Georgia. That makes 26 bank failures so far this year, topping the number for all of last year. Meanwhile, the Fed has been putting the country's 19 biggest banks through what are called stress tests. And Anthony Mason reports the banks got their preliminary results today.
If the government gives the banks an A-OK, says Dick Beauvais, no one will believe it. If it says the banks are in trouble, it could cause another panic.
So they've put themselves into a corner, and it's really going to be interesting to figure out how they're going to come out of it.
At the same time, the government's now setting up an auction market for the banks to sell off the bad loans that have caused this crisis.
These are all the mortgage documents of the toxic assets that need to start transferring hands.
The Denver-based Allonhill company analyzes those bad loans for potential buyers.
And you think there's going to be a healthy market for this?
I do think there's going to be a very active and healthy market immediately.
But Sue Allen says the banks will take big losses.
These assets are going to take extreme write-downs. And the reality is that that will disrupt some of these banks.
Some analysts believe the banks could still need another $1 trillion to shore up their balance sheet. Any banks that fail the stress test have until next week to tell the government how they plan to come up with more capital.
Is the housing market a business anymore, or has it become another entitlement, just like food stamps or Medicare? Well, let's ask a couple of folks who have skin in the game. David Birnbaum is Executive Vice President of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. He is an affordable housing advocacy. It is an affordable housing advocacy group. He joins us from D.C. And Sue Allen, who runs Allonhill, a company that examines and prices toxic mortgages. She joins us now from Denver. Well, Sue, first of all, I thought that the market for these toxic mortgages had frozen up, that there wasn't a market. You say there is, and you're involved with it. Explain.
Absolutely. There are investors with billions of dollars, literally, that they're holding on to, and they're just waiting for an opportunity to purchase toxic assets.
But waiting for what? Waiting for the government to come in and put a price that's higher than they get in the market, or what?
Well, the banks have these loans that are bad on their books, and they can't afford to sell them at market price because market price is substantially below, of course, what those loans were originated at. And so, yes, the government does have to intervene and bolster the banks so that they can afford to part with these loans, or the banks will be insolvent. The simple fact is, if the banks were to sell at market price, they'd go under. It'd be irresponsible of them to do that. And I do think that the government needs to come in and give some kind of, make some kind of intervention with the banks in order for them to afford to sell these assets and not be insolvent.
Well, off the books, but we got to leave it at that, Sue. I noticed you nodding in agreement. A lot of people don't like that mark-to-market. Sue Allen.
I don't like it.
David Birnbaum, you're on record. Thank you very much. Tracy and John and Gary, we'll see you later.
This is CBS 4 News, coverage you can count on.
America's financial system has been waiting nervously for the administration's plan to clear out those toxic assets.
Those toxic assets have been the poison helping to choke our economy these days. But what are they? That's a good question. Here's CBS 4's Alan Janae.
What is that on the ground?
I don't know. Gross.
Think of what leaks out of a trash can as bad mortgages. Yucky stuff.
Yucky stuff.
Or the fluids that come out of your car. It remind you of mortgages?
Yes, it could.
What are these people behind you doing?
They are looking at loan files
Doesn't really bother Sue Allen, CEO of Allonhill, a company that reviews loans to figure out a value.
Is anything too toxic?
No.
Nothing?
No.
You'll touch anything?
We'll touch anything.
Toxic assets are groups of loans, mostly mortgages, bundled like recyclables, waiting for resale. But there's been little demand for them.
It's not making payments, or maybe it's missed some payments. It can also be a loan that's in foreclosure.
When housing was going up, banks sold bundles of mortgages, then made new loans. But now that housing is down, banks aren't selling them, so nobody's been sure what the toxic assets are worth, because nobody knows how far housing will fall. Investors who buy the packages have been holding back.
So what a lot of this is about is the fact that there's a lot of money sitting out there waiting, right?
There is a lot of money on the sidelines right now, billions of dollars.
Now, if the packages of loans sell for, say, 30 or 40 cents on the dollar, new investors who have less in them will be more willing to renegotiate better terms with people.
I think a lot of these are going to maximize their value by selling fairly quickly. Getting that mortgage modified, getting that borrower on their feet, and then selling that current asset.
Is it then non-toxic?
It's non-toxic.
What is it then?
It's a good
Healthy?
loan. It's called a good loan.
Okay.
That's your good question. Alan Janae, CBS 4 News.